Okay, so let's get started. So welcome today to MI Club online. Really excited you could all join us. I've just got a few links down here. I'm sure all of you will know the website by now, but it's miinlondon.org. If you want to send me an email, either during this or after this, you can send something to miclub@miinlondon.org or tweet at miinlondon. So today we're going to be covering reflections in motivational interviewing. It's one of my favorite topics in motivational interviewing. And I'm really excited to be able to share a small proportion of what we're going to go through today. So some of you will be familiar with MI Club. Some of you may have attended the face-to-face MI Club that I have run in London before. Some of you will know from the website what it's about. I just want to really quickly explain. So MI Club is a micro training. It's about 1 hour long. And the idea is that we learn one thing every month for motivational interviewing that we can practice over the course of the next month. It's a safe place to learn, safe place to ask questions, and a safe place to practice MI. So as I said, session is recorded. It's only me and my voice that's being recorded, and we can interact anytime during the chat function. If you chat normally, it goes to literally everyone, but as some of you have discovered already, there is a little button that says @ on it. If you click the @ button or tap the @ button, you can send a message to one person specifically. So if you want to send me a message and you don't want everyone else to see it, you can just click or tap that @ button and send a message directly to me. Okay. So let's go. Aims for today. Just be curious about reflections and everything we're going to cover. Some of this for some of you may be new, some of it may be revision, going over what you've done already, but just be curious and keep an open mindset. We're going to learn about what a reflection is. We're going to learn about 2 types of reflections, and we're going to go into a little bit more detail about each type. We're also going to hopefully start using some of the reflections. So you might remember when you signed up to MI Club Online, I asked you whether you'd be happy to appear on webcam or whether you'd prefer to just have an audio session. About halfway through the club, I'm going to be sending through a link on the chat, and that link will take you directly into a meeting room with someone else who's agreed to either appear on webcam or just on voice to be able to practice 1 or 2 of the things that we've learned. For me, this is a key element of Motivational Interviewing Club and something that I know we do when we do it in person, with the idea is that it's through practice that we really get better at motivational interviewing, and this is a safe place to have a chat and to do that. So we're going to go through today's presentation, which isn't too long, but should be quite informative to do with reflections. We're going to do an individual practice. That serves 2 functions. First of all, for you to go through what we've covered already, and also during that time, I'll be allocating you to a specific room with someone else. We'll then do a partner practice. After that, we'll come back, debrief, see how you found it, with any comments and questions you might have for me. So a reflection is a statement that essentially holds a mirror up to what the person has been saying. It lets them hear that you've understood what they've said. So what's the point? Why reflect? The idea is that it deepens our understanding of the person. It demonstrates active listening, which some of you will know was a key term coined by Thomas Gordon, who came up with the 12 roadblocks to communication. And if you're interested in learning more about the 12 roadblocks to communication, if you go to the free information part of my website, you can download those roadblocks. So it demonstrates active listening. Also demonstrates empathy and use of MI Spirit. And some of you will already have heard of MI Spirit. I've got a set of slides, I think, on it on the website, and we'll be covering it in another MI Club Online in the future. The idea of MI Spirit is it really lets someone know that you are feeling compassionate towards them, that you accept everything about them, that you work in partnership with them, and we're able to have like a period of evocation with a person. It also keeps the person focused on the change. And you may know already that people who focus on change within change conversations, it might sound silly, but are more likely to change. And what I mean by that is, if we're able to reflect the change a person is giving us, they are more likely to stay on track. You may know already that motivational interviewing follows a guiding style, as well as a following style and a leading directive style, but more so a guiding style, with the idea that we're on this journey with the client or patient or individual all at the same time. And by keeping a person on track, it's been shown that less sort of either sustained talk or discord or other types of conversation lead to less types of change. So the more we can keep a person focused on change, the more likely they are to change. So what is a reflection in MI? A lot of different people say a lot of different things about what a reflection is. So what I'm going to give to you today is MI's interpretation of a reflection. And along with everything else that we talk about today, it might not be that these specific things work for you, but it's up to you to decide whether or not you think they're useful in your line of work. So motivational interviewing splits reflections into two types: simple reflections and complex reflections. We're going to spend a bit of time talking about both. And again, if you've got any questions as we go, please type them into the chat and I'll do my best to address them as we go. So what's a simple reflection? A simple reflection might be used when you want to keep the conversation going as it is, but perhaps not guide it towards any specific place. You might just want to show that you understood what the person has said. You might want to keep the conversation going, but you might not want to ask a question of the person specifically. Two types of simple reflection you can give would be to just repeat exactly what the person has said back to them, or slightly rephrase what they've said back to them. So simple reflections, if you're new to reflections, are a really, really good place to start because they're quite simple. You can keep, I suppose, a really good handle on where you are with it because you're literally just going to repeat or rephrase what the person said to you beforehand. What you might find is if you've ever been caught in a circular conversation, for example, where you're talking to someone and the conversation just feels like it's going round and round, simple reflections generally don't help you get out of that circular conversation. But we're going to talk about complex reflections later and how that hopefully will help you to move out of that. So just to give you an example, I've chosen a few examples here. Weight loss might not be your thing, but you can almost replace any statement in this. And that's something we're going to do a little bit later. And somebody might say, I really want to lose weight. And your repetition reflection might just be, you want to lose weight. A rephrase of that might be, you want some weight to come off. You've put it in different words, but essentially you're saying exactly the same thing back to the person. What you're generally looking for with this from someone is for them to agree, to go, yes. So far, I've never had anyone say, well, that's exactly what I've just said. But you're likely to have the other person feel like you understand them. Simple reflections are kind of those things that keep the conversation above water. They don't go deep into what we're trying, I suppose, deep into emotions, deep into feeling, deep into meaning, but they do let the person feel understood. But they are, I suppose, the top of the iceberg in terms of the conversation that we're having. So what happens when we want to delve a little bit further in? Well, that's where complex reflections come in. So a complex reflection is great for taking the conversation a little bit deeper, and that's this bit. This is the bit that we're trying to focus on with a complex reflection. You might use a complex reflection when you want to prevent conversations going around in circles, when you want to add meaning to the client's words, or kind of take a guess as to what they're saying. A complex reflection is really important in guiding the conversation towards change, because quite often you get surface level conversations, and what you're really trying to do is to get that element of change, that why the person wants to change. You want to try and evoke out their reasons for change, and sometimes people won't give them to you. And so a complex reflection is kind of designed to go a little bit deeper and hopefully draw out what the person really means. Now, a lot of people get worried with complex reflections because essentially sometimes you're taking a guess as to what the person is saying. In my experience, people will either say, yes, that's exactly what I meant, or they'll say, no, that's not what I mean. And that gives you a great opportunity to follow up with a question with something like, well, can you tell me what it is you do mean? Or could you just explain a little bit more for me so I can understand? So a complex reflection could be used as a paraphrase. So what a person has said. You could use metaphor, meaning, or feeling, as well as lay out change talk and sustain talk, which would be a double-sided reflection. Change talk being any statement that is pro-change that the person's given you, and sustain talk being, I suppose, a reason not to change. So, for example, using one of the examples we had earlier, you might have, I really want to lose weight, which is a change statement, change talk. They might follow that with, I just don't have the time, and that would be sustain talk. We also have a complex reflection called continuing the sentence, and all that does is continues where the person has left off, as if you're finishing it off for them. So whenever I've done training with this, I have a sheet that I give to people, and it's not too dissimilar to what we're going to go through a little bit later on one of these slides. And what I ask people to do is to kind of come up with a statement that either at work or at home that somebody might say to you quite regularly. And the idea is to go through every type of simple reflection or complex reflection and see if you can reflect the statement. But it's worth knowing that you can't always use all types of complex reflections for each statement that a person's giving you. And so I suppose it's just worth knowing which ones you want to use. For example, if someone is giving you a change talk statement followed by a sustain talk statement, you might find a double-sided reflection is really useful. But if someone hasn't given you any sustain talk or any change talk, you might find it a little bit more difficult to do something like a double-sided reflection. So here's some examples. If somebody said again, I really want to lose weight, your paraphrase might be, it's time to drop some pounds. So all of these complex reflections are just the first thing that came to my head when I typed that in. But what that does is, I suppose it's bordering on a simple reflection. It's time to drop some pounds. But what you're hoping is that the person's going to go, well, yeah, it is. And then we can follow that up with another question. Continuing the sentence. I really want to lose weight. It's going to help you achieve what you want to achieve. Metaphor for something like, I'm tired. I've got so many things to do before I have to exercise. Metaphor might be, you've got a lot of hurdles to jump over before you get to exercise. Or a feeling might be, it seems a bit draining to do, but it's something you're interested in doing. Someone said, I'm worried about my health with drinking, but it's so much fun to do. You might say, as a double-sided reflection, you want to have a really good time, and yet it's going to be better for you if you cut it out for good. A meaning is really you're trying to distill what the person is saying with that sentence. I know it might seem obvious because they've just said it, but what you're trying to say is, what is the actual meaning of this person's sentence? And what I've taken out of this, again, it might be wrong for this person, but is that that person wants to live a long and healthy life. That's not something they've said directly, but that's the kind of inference that I'm taking from this. So, thinking about the following statement, I really want to lose weight, but I just love to eat, especially sugary treats. I can't stop myself when they're in the house, and I know it's not good for me. See if you can come up with some reflections to this statement, and we'll come back in about 5 minutes or so to give this a go. and I'll mute myself in the middle so you can have a go. What I've done here is just put that statement followed by all of the different types of reflection. And I'll run through them each just one more time so you can see. If you want a reminder of each of the reflections that we just covered, if you take your web browser in a new tab and go to minlondon.org/exercise, you'll be able to see all the examples that I've just been through with you. So simple reflections, repeating what the person has said, or just changing the words around slightly for a simple rephrase. A paraphrase, saying what the client has just said in your own words. A double-sided reflection, using statements pro-change and statements for staying the same. An amplified reflection, something that I didn't cover before, but I've put in here, is where you take one answer to the extreme. So if somebody was talking about smoking, for example, and said, I don't know, finding it really hard to quit, I don't think it's for me, an amplified reflection would take it as far as possible to one end and say, you'll never stop smoking. And the idea is that hopefully someone would say, well, I didn't say never. Metaphor, making a metaphor out of a statement. Reflecting feeling, reflecting meaning, or continuing the sentence. After we go through this for 5 minutes, what I'm going to do is give an answer for each one of these. So hopefully we can have something similar. So good luck. I'm going to mute myself now, but if you want to ask any questions, you can do on the chat. Good luck. Okay, everyone, welcome back. I hope you were able to give that exercise a go, and I'm sure you'll be able to tell me how it went a little bit later. But what I'd like to do now is just spend a little bit of time going through each of these. I'm pretty sure when I click next, they're all going to appear at once rather than one at a time, but we'll talk through them one at a time nevertheless. Okay, so let's go through this again. I want to lose weight, but I just love to eat, especially sugary treats. I can't stop myself when they're in the house. I know it's not good for me. So a repeat might be, you want to lose weight. That's pretty obvious from the conversation we've just had, but definitely a good repeat. Simple rephrase. It's hard not to eat the treats, and you find it hard to stop yourself. Again, that's something that she said. You've picked out a few things, but you've changed the words around a little bit. Moving on to the complex reflections. A paraphrase might be, it's tough to stay away from the sweet treats, but deep down you know you're better off without them, finishing on the change. Double-sided, you love to eat the sugary treats, and losing weight is a priority for you. A metaphor, you want to show others you can tame this lion. I don't know where that came from when I said that, but that's the sort of kind of thing you're looking for with a metaphor. Feeling, you're upset that you can't control what you're eating. I think it'd be really interesting to see how that one went, actually, saying that to someone. Some people might say, yes, it's really upsetting, it's something I want to do, but other people might not take too kindly to that. So it'd be interesting to see how that worked. For meaning, controlling your eating is important to you to feel good about yourself. Again, not quite sure how that one would go down, but it would be really good if you hit the nail on the head with that one. And continue in the sentence. And now might be the time to make the first steps towards a change. And we're hoping that after that, someone's going to go, yes, that's exactly what I'd like to do. So those are just some examples. You might have your own. And if you think, oh, I answered one of these, let's say the paraphrase one or a meaning one, and I'm not quite sure how well I've done that, send me a private message and I can chat to you about it. Okay. So the key is with complex reflections and simple reflections to practice. I remember reflections was definitely the one thing I struggled with when I started, probably most out of everything. And I found practice was the best way to do it. And you'll find your own way depending on how you feel about using reflections of doing this. But what I tried to do over years and years ago now, one whole month, is to try and just reflect almost everything anyone said to me. And just see how it went. And to my surprise, it worked really, really well. Some people often ask me how many reflections they should be using in a conversation with someone. And there's no hard and fast rule. It depends on the conversation that you're having. What you probably want to look for at the beginning is to use one reflection for every question that you use with someone. And obviously, that doesn't have to be one question, then a reflection, then a question, then a reflection, then a question. But if you think, of the conversation, maybe you've asked, 5 or 6 questions with someone, then you probably want to be looking at reflecting about 5 or 6. What I would try and do, if you're able, is just to try and increase the number of reflections that you can have in a conversation with someone over time. Kind of the golden ratio, I guess, with questions to reflections would be either 2 to 1, 2 reflections to 1 question, or maybe 3 to 1, 3 reflections to every question. I know we get quite used to asking questions in conversations, so definitely reflecting should be able to help with that. Okay, so time to practice in pairs. So this is the first time I've ever done anything like this before. So let's see how this goes. So what I'm going to ask you to do in a second is go to the chat function. I'm going to copy and paste your name there, along with a link to click or tap. What should happen, fingers crossed, is that if you click or tap that link, it should take you directly into a chat room, and it will just be you and the other person that has that link. If you've agreed to appear on audio, then you'll just be with someone in audio. If you've agreed to appear on webcam with someone, it will appear with someone with a webcam. However, if their webcam isn't working, don't be offended. I've already had someone today say that their webcam's not working. So, but you should be able to go into that room. When you're in the room with someone, just have a chat either about your experience with reflections, how you found that reflections exercise, anything you thought went well with it, anything that you struggled with, or anything else. It's your room. You can talk about what you like. And then I'll ask you to come back in about 10 minutes time. First things first, if you get in there, try and introduce yourself, yeah, discuss what you'd like to discuss in the room. So I'll see you in 10 minutes. I'll mute myself so you don't have to listen to me whilst you're talking to someone else. I'll still be in the Join Me chat room, which is what we're in now, if you want to talk, and I'll come back in about 10 minutes. So I'm going to now copy and paste your rooms in the chat. I'm going to do that again, but actually do it correctly and copy the rooms. Okay, here we go. I know there's someone here on just on the phone rather than anywhere else, so I'm not sure if you're able to go to that room, but give it a go. Let me know if you can, and then I'll go into the other room with someone. Thanks, guys. Good luck. Hi everyone, hopefully you can hear me. Welcome back. I know that worked quite well for some people and not well at all for some other people. So we'll keep working on that and see if we can come up with something that will work for everyone. Hopefully you were able to talk a little bit about yourselves and, if possible, any experience you've got on reflections with each other. I don't know if there was anyone who wanted to ask any questions or perhaps discuss anything that happened in the group chat that you were just in. I'd really appreciate it if anybody wanted to discuss that or let me know how they found it or just their experience of using reflections in MI. We've got about 10 minutes left now. Okay. So we've had, so someone's asked me for a few more examples of some double-sided reflections. So I'll try and do that for you. So for those of you who haven't used double-sided reflections that much, I'll just go through again what a double-sided reflection is. So normally when people are talking to you, most people when they're talking about change will give you some kind of change statement. So the examples we've had in here might be, about I really want to lose weight, or I'd really like to give up smoking. And so you start to hear change talk from people about things they'd like to do, but obviously change is quite hard, and normally people try and bring themselves back down to the reasons that generally they can't change. It's not anything with that person specifically, it's just a normal part of what we do, because we like to have balance in conversations. And so normally you would have change talk, such as I'd really like to lose weight, or I reckon I should stop smoking for my health. But then you have something else come in afterwards, which might be, but I can't because of whatever reason it might be. And that reason might be real, it might be perceived. It's not important. The important thing is in there. And what you normally have is you normally have a change talk, something that somebody wants to say, usually with the word but in the middle, and then followed by a reason that you can't do it. And so a double-sided reflection is where you get the change talk at the front and the sustained talk at the end, the reason they can't do it, and just swap it around. And so instead of saying, I'd really like to lose weight, but I haven't got the time, you would say something like, you're finding it hard to find the time, and yet you really want to lose the weight. Or I'd really like to stop smoking for my health, but all my friends smoke. And a double-sided reflection might be something like, all of the people you're with are doing the same thing that you're doing, and yet you want to be the one to break away from that and do something differently. And so you can see you're just swapping both statements round. And you can do a repetition and say exactly what they've said, or you can say something and rephrase it or reframe it, like I did there a little bit. But basically, you're just looking to swap those two things round. The difference is as well that instead of having the word but in the middle, you switch out the word but and put in the word and. So you're looking to say the reason they can't do something, and yet they'd really like to do it. Yeah, so as someone's just said here, Samantha, looking to highlight the paradox. In the second MI book, you might call that developing discrepancy, taking and building a bit of a void maybe between someone where they are now. It's not quite there, but you're looking to show them head on, this is what you've just said. Although you've got this barrier, you are still wanting some level of change. We're still talking about it, and we think that you still might like to change as well. Thank you. I hope that's helpful. Any other questions or comments before we go on? Okay. So we've got a couple of questions that have come in. So I've got a list of those here, and I'll type them up on the slides just here, along with hopefully some answers that you'll be able to use that I've talked about, and you'll be able to have access to this on the website. This normally appears tomorrow sometime, so you'll be able to see the whole presentation that we've gone through today, as well as hopefully the questions and the answers. So that brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you ever so much for coming to the very first MI Club Online. All I'd ask you to do, would be really helpful for me for this free session, just to get some feedback from you, how you found today. On the chat box, if you're able to, if you click the app button and choose myself, you can send me a direct message. It'd be really great to hear from you about maybe one thing you thought was really good about today, one thing you thought that either could be improved or wasn't so good, and then maybe any other comments that you might have. I'll be here for the next 10 minutes or so just on the chat, so if you want to send me any messages, I'd love to hear from you. Until then, thanks ever so much for participating in MI Club today, and I look forward to seeing you and hearing you soon. Cheerio, everyone.